projects. One is on digital publishing project. His digital publishing project that focus on Nagarika Foods' visit to the U.S. To 1904 World Fair in St. Louis, and also Kisho Shushi, Journal of the Meteorological Science of Japan from Meiji and Taisho period. So he will talk about when to go digital.
Okay, thank you. If you can hear me in the back, just let me know. I tend to go softer when I talk faster. Just let me know, stop me, and let me know. But well, so yeah, my presentation today is titled "When to Go Digital," but just wanted to state up front that I'm not going to present any prescriptive solution regarding when to move your project to digital, or well, yeah, and that's for two reasons. One is obviously any research involves iterative processes, and it's just there's no way to prescribe a one-size-fits-all solution. But the other reason is that this is the question, how to sort of, well, you probably know this as through the course of this presentation, but that's sort of how to incorporate digital and not so digital resources into my own project is actually a question I struggle with in the context of my current projects. So that's not what I'm going to talk about. What I'm going to talk about. First, I wanted to quickly go through some of the past and ongoing projects I've worked on and working on, and so how I engage with digital objects and resources. And then I also wanted to discuss some of the challenges, opportunities and challenges in using digital and computational analysis. Some of them, many of them will actually intersect with what's already been brought up and this morning. But and then at the very end, I wanted to show a few platforms I use and thinking of using because that's relevant to one of the projects I'm working on. So my background is actually in communications research, media studies. So for my dissertation research, I looked at Japanese, Brazilian return migrants in Japan and their use of traditional and digital media. And for part of my research, I used a YouTube video. I also looked at web interfaces and also messages posted on some of the websites. So these are sort of born digital objects I've used in my research. And along the way, I also analyzed user interfaces of some of the websites, mostly from Japan, and yeah, so one of those was a social network site, Mixi. Mixi, have you heard of this social network site? It was massively popular, maybe up until 5 years ago, before it was almost completely wiped out by other services like Line, Twitter, Facebook. So, let's see. Yeah, look at the user interface of Mixi. But my engagement in these past projects have been almost entirely traditional, almost analog, so to speak. I did these projects in a tradition of qualitative social sciences, and what I did with Mixi's user interface, for example, was I took very thick, almost auto-ethnographic note as I clicked through different parts of the website of this social network service. And I based my analysis that when I argued that the interface of Mixi on its own sort of tries to draw a boundary around what is Japan, who are the Japanese, and who can be a comfortable, who can sort of fit in comfortably within the bounds of Japanese society. So yeah, what I did might be close to, similar to traditional close reading in literary disciplines. Now, it's a shameless self-plug. My essay on Mixi is included in this volume that came out earlier this year, Cultural Communication in Japan, Theorizing and Homogenizing Discourses. But in any case. So onto my current ongoing project. So after engaging with digital objects with traditional sort of analog methods in the earlier project, I turned around and started using more digital resources and digital tools to engage with more sort of, started using digital tools to engage with more traditional kinds of text. And I feel it's other way around. It's kind of, but that's how I guess things evolved into. So the first project I'm interested in, as Setsuko mentioned, is a reading of Nagai Kafu's America Monogatari, or American Stories. And this Nagai Kafu is very well known, but he was born in Japan, 1879. But he lived and worked and studied in the United States from 1903 to 1906. And America Monogatari is a collection of short stories he wrote during that period of time. This is where he spent his time and wrote his stories in. During that stay, he took a boat from Japan, landed on North America in, I guess it's Canadian side, but in Victoria, and then he quickly moves on to Seattle, Tacoma. He spent some time in St. Louis, moves on to Chicago, Kansas, Michigan, had some stints in DC and New York, and then he leaves for Europe. He spends about a year mostly in France before going back to Japan. And I guess the rest is history. He sort of becomes one of the canonical authors of Japanese literature. And what I was originally interested in, and also this is kind of the only part I've completed, or nearly completed, so far in this project, but it was to reconstruct what Nagai Kafu saw when he visited the 1904 World's Fair that took place in St. Louis in Forest Park, if you know where it is. And he wrote a short story, very short story, entitled Sui Bijin, Drunken Beauty, maybe. I wanted to incorporate some digital resources, digitized images available to reconstruct the scene of that short story and Nagai Kafu's visit. And I published, or I tried to publish this on a digital publishing platform called Scalar. I will come back to that a little later. But for now, I'm just going to very briefly talk through the second project. It's analysis of Kisho Shushi, which is a journal of the Meteorological Society of Japan. It's an official, professional, and academic journal, and I'm interested in the first series that came out mostly in Meiji, well, I guess entirely in Meiji and Taisho period, 1882 through 1922. And I'm interested in how meteorologists who were involved in early development of the science of the weather in Japan were also involved in expanding the boundary of the Japanese empire, because it really coincides with the expansion of that Meiji empire. And I also, and Kisho Shushi is digitized, and it's available on JStage. That's a cross-institutional repository of digital and digitized journals in Japan. It's just available as scanned images in PDF, not OCR. It's not full text searchable, or computer readable, like Mori's Taiyo corpus. But and I also look at the database called digital. This is also a digitized collection of weather charts. There is a database out of National Institute of Informatics in Japan. It's called Hyakunen Tenkizu database. That sort of digitizes and stores every single central observatory weather chart published since 1881, I believe. And this is actually how I got interested in the relationship between meteorology and Japanese empire's expanding boundaries. This is a chart from September 30th, 1896, and this is the same Central Observatory weather chart published the very next day, October 1st, 1896. And do you see the difference between this and this? It includes, larger area. Can you guess what happened? Not on this specific date or this 1896. There's a little bit of that, but
Sino-Japanese War.
yes, Sino-Japanese War. At the conclusion of Sino-Japanese War in 1895, Japan acquired the control of Taiwan. That's why this chart had to be expanded to include Taiwan. So far I don't know the reason why it took almost a year and a half for the Central Observatory to start including Taiwan. It may have had to do with setting up weather stations. It may have had to do something with having real-time communication with our stations. That's been a challenge back then. It may also probably have to do with like printing and when you run out older stock of smaller weather chart and when you can start actually using the new base map. But so yeah, I thought it was interesting how meteorologists engaged with expanding boundary of the empire. And this is a little less visually striking, but of course Japanese empire moves into Korean peninsula, and so does Japanese meteorologists and observatories. So before 1895, Kisho reports observations from these 4 locations. And actually, Incheon, Busan, and Wonsan, I believe, at top, those are all open ports. So observations were actually taken at Korean customs offices, not by the hands of Japanese. After 1896, Japan started to extend more power after sort of attempting to drive out China and Russians. Started to have sort of extend more control over the peninsula and just see 3 more stations added, including Pyongyang. So it's not, drastic increase or anything, but still sort of goes along with Japan's increasing power on the peninsula, and also this was happening before, kind of long before Japan's formal annexation of Korea. That happened in 1910, but even before that, Japan's official weather stations were there. Now, let me skip these 2. Another shameless self-plug, I'm going to be presenting this at next AAS. It's a Saturday evening session. I know that's not going to be very popular, but it would be great if you, if you're interested in more sort of academic historical aspect of this. Great. And I had too many shameless self-plugs, so as a token of apology, this is a picture of a selfie plug. Just have you spend some time with that. Okay. Now, let me move on to talk a little bit about how I'm engaging with data or digital resources in these 2 ongoing projects. And let me start with Kisho Shushi, the second example. As I said, Kisho Shushi is scanned and available on JStage, but they're not OCR. Meaning, they're not machine readable, they're not full text searchable. So what I've done so far with the PDFs, those PDFs are pretty much, it's not really digital, it's not computational either. So it's probably what any of us do when reading a PDF. Text, I had PDF text open up in one window, and I had this is just a text editor or outline editor I use when I write my papers and some other things. And I took notes. I was mostly interested in because my question deals with the boundary of the Japanese Empire. I was mostly interested in identifying place names, geographic names that were mentioned in the articles. And this is sort of still a very traditional way of doing research. It relies on human reading the text, and certainly there's limit on how many articles, how many volumes we can go through, even if it's a digital text that's sitting online on the computer. But the articles are available as PDFs, and there are still a lot of issues with Japanese OCR, particularly Meiji Taisho text is still hard. Maybe one good thing about Kishio Shushi is it's an academic journal, so it has less number of advertisements and illustrations like Taiyo. It's different from Taiyo in that way. It might be a little more OCR friendly, and Professor Mark Ravina at Emory is also working on Meiji documents, so maybe we might be able to figure out something. But if OCR and sort of full text digitization of this digital archive can be done, then the benefits are huge. I should be able to automate a lot of things I'm doing here by hand, particularly picking out geographic names, place names that's mentioned in the article. And so this is the map I showed earlier. It only has like 7 points, and it only shows like 3 increase in weather stations during this course of 10 years, which isn't very striking, or it's not quite visually telling of the moving border of Japanese empire. But if I can automate the process and have and using that process map sort of every single article that appeared in Kishio Shushi during Meiji and Taisho era, and map these onto a map of East Asia based on which geographic locations are mentioned in the article. That might give us better visualization of the relationship between Japanese empire and meteorological observation. That's something I cannot run easily at this stage, but and the result is still, I might still get visualization that totally does not make sense. But well, research is iterative process in that way too. I may need to come up with better questions, better ways to processing the data, better ways to engage with digital materials. And of course, there will be challenges. Just mention one. And this is also a challenge for human readers too. I had a hard time figuring out what these two places, where these two locations were. The first one, it looks like it says hitting a dog, and the other one looks like it's a chicken cage. But these are Chinese character expressions that we no longer use for places in Taiwan. Any guesses? I think one is Kaohsiung and the other is Keelung. We use completely different set of Chinese characters for these places, and throughout Kishoshushi too, this is not consistent. Sometimes they use the same Chinese characters as we use now. Sometimes they just use katakana. So it will be a challenge for computational OCR and computational analysis as well. So yeah, but if we can overcome those obstacles, maybe we'll be able to automate some processes. And that's one sort of power of having computer-assisted reading. Now on to the first project on Nagai Kafu. This is how I sort of managed my data. It's not really data per se, and it's very primitive. It's just an Excel spreadsheet. I have a Japanese original, I have English translation, I have URLs for images that's related to that particular passage. This is very primitive version of what Cheryl might have in her database. But I might be, if I'm interested, I might be able to add things like geotags, like geographic coordinates to this, if I wanted to use. One of the challenge I have with America Monogatari is, again, it's not fully, not at all digitized. The source of the sort of obvious source of for digital text for Japanese literary work is Aozora Bunko, but it's, last I checked, it's America Monogatari is under, it's in process for more than 6 years now. I'm not sure, so I'm not sure when it's going to come out. For my project on Sui Vision, I just typed out. I had a book open, I typed out. That's actually how Aozora Bunko also digitized the text. And it kind of worked. Sui Vision is a very short story, so it kind of worked. I'm not sure if I wanted to continue doing that for longer short stories and for the entire collection on Eika Monogatari, because it's significantly longer. Now I just wanted to break out of PowerPoint and show how I use that data, and it's also not automated or sort of computer assisted. It's this is more like a traditional, written more like a traditional academic paper. But where I used that spreadsheet is mostly sort of coordinating these images to some of the scenes described in the short story. So this is a scene from St. Louis's Union Station, which isn't a station anymore. But and it might be hard to read, but up top he has descriptions of the station he gets in, and that's where this part corresponds to. And this might be sort of the most sophisticated or most interactive part that came out of that, although I used this just web tool georeferencer. It's a georeference map of the ground of World's Fair, 1904 World's Fair. It's projected onto current map of the area, the first part in St. Louis. It probably look quite a lot better if the map was AAA compatible. I guess you see a little bit of, if you zoom in, you start to see some blemishes. And it's kind of slow to load. So I use, as I mentioned before, this is Scalar, digital publishing platform called Scalar that came out of University of Southern California projects. And one of the good thing about Scalar is if you have a compatible image, you don't really need to save that image to your computer and then upload that again to your content management system. It will automatically brings in the image as well as certain metadata from compatible websites. This is from Library of Congress digital collections. But right now I am actually thinking of moving this to a platform called Omeka. That's what our library uses for digital curation and digital exhibition. Part of the reason though is some of the images are from, all the images are actually from other institutions. This is from Missouri History Museum, the other one's from Historical Society of Missouri, and there are different licenses and reuse rights associated with that, and I wasn't sure. And this Scalar publication is my own sort of individual digital publication. So I wasn't really sure if Missouri History Museum, for instance, will grant me sort of academic reuse, scholarly reuse, because this is sort of my private digital publication, or this could be considered as such. And this is closed, it's not open to public on Scalar, unfortunately, but for that particular reason. But our Washington University in St. Louis also has big collection of World's Fair related materials. Because as you can see here, and if you like degrees of transparency, you can see it was within the grounds of, you can see up there, Washington University in St. Louis, up top in the right-hand side corner. It was within the boundary of World's Fair. You can still see some of the buildings corresponds to our current campus map as well. But anyway, so yeah, we have our university archives and special collections have a big collection on this World's Fair. So I wanted to sort of switch out images to images from our own special collections. That way I don't really have to deal with licensing and reuse rights that much. And Omeka is also a very powerful platform. This is available on Omeka. It's from our music library, but the digital collection of music, sheet music, performed at Manual for Louisiana Purchase Exposition. That's the official name for the World Fair. But you can use Omeka to, like this, just to showcase your collection. You can also, Omeka can be configured to present more sort of, configured to tell the stories, present sort of explanations, analysis in a more narrative format as well. It's almost like a blog. And this is also done by a colleague of mine at Music Library at Washington University, Karen Olson. She wrote the analysis, in-deep analysis, and around this theme, things like influence of Black popular culture on the music played on the ground of World's Fair. And I think Omeka, the production version of Omeka also came up very recently with a IIIF plugin, so that Omeka can be enhanced with that. Omeka also has like more like a GIS compatible plugins as well. It's very powerful, and I'm sure it's adopted many different institutions. But yeah, so I guess incorporating local Washington University held images and moving it from Scala to Omeka provides me opportunities to connect resources in special collections and university archives in our own institution, and connect that with teaching of Japanese literature that's done in campus. Also connect that with other collections such as this, connect that with local history and teaching of Japanese literature as well. So those are some of the opportunities I see. And that's actually all of my presentation. If you have any questions, I guess we still have some time to take questions now, but if you have some questions or project you want to discuss later, that's my contact information.
Thank you. Do you have any questions to him?